Yo, it is 105 degrees here in Las Vegas. That is what we call a heater. But that's perfect for today's video because I'm about to go on a heater on these poker tables. What's going on, everybody? It's 2 Commas. Thanks for tuning in to Year of the Wager. We're gonna dive into this 2040 action. Let's see how I did. Five minutes till the start of the Badugi tournament. It's go time. May all the ace, deuce, 3, 4 different suits be with me. So the Badugi tournament did not go quite as planned since I was planning on making the final table and winning a bracelet, but just too many times I would be ahead going into the final draw, either with an already made Badugi or with an 3-card Bedogi that was gonna win, like ace 2 3, and my opponent would get there and I wouldn't, as evidenced by this hand that knocked me out, where I actually had a 9 high Bedogi going into the final draw, and my opponent drew 1 and made an 8 high Bedogi, thus eliminating me from the tournament. He was a great guy though, from the Netherlands. He was a big fan of the channel. And I don't know, maybe I should stop making these videos because people are getting too good at Badugi. So got knocked out of the Badugi tournament, round 8. Unfortunate. It was freezing, so I had to go get me some WSOP gear, which I think is strategy by them. But only thing we can do now is hop back in the 2040 mix game and try and make the money back. So we're about to do that and see how that goes. So I buy into the 2040 game with $1,000, which is my usual, and we start off playing Badeucey. I'm in the big blind and I've got a 7-5-4-3. I don't have an ace, and I always say don't play this game or ace to 5 without an ace, but I'm a little hard-headed. I also have 3 cards to a pretty good Bedogi, so I decide to toss 1 card and draw another to see where I end up. My first draw actually pairs me up, which is not what I want, but it also is a card that my opponents would want. And so when I decide to toss the 3, I'm hoping that I'm going to do a little bit better than my opponents in this hand. I make a deuce of spades on my second draw, which is not that bad. I've got a 7 high Badeucey hand with a 3-card 2-4-5 in the Bedogi side of things. I bet $40, get called, and I decide to stay pat. What surprises me is my opponent stays pat as well. That is not a good sign. I check after the 3rd draw and he checks, which is surprising because he had a 6 high hand with a 3-card 4 Bedogi, and that's what we call scooping the pot against me. So I'm not exactly sure why he played so passively, but he had a much better hand than I did. And sometimes you gotta live to fight another day. On the next hand, we decide to run it one more time, and I don't actually have as good of a hand as I started with on the last time, but I do have an ace this time. And the first draw does me justice. I bring in the 2-3-3, which means not only do I have 4 to a wheel, I also have a wheel card that someone else wants, and I also have 3 cards towards a Bedogi. So I'm feeling really good about this hand, and I do have multiple opponents. I draw 1, and on the second draw, I hit that miracle 5, which means I've got the wheels on the bus that go round and round. On the bus go round and round, round and round. Now what we want to do is actually get as much money in the pot in case the Bedogi side of the hand does not hold up, since I only have 3 cards to a Bedogi with my ace 2-3, and hope that I can scoop. But if I don't scoop, I want as much money from other players in the pot as possible, so that when we chop, I end up making some money. I bet all the way through 3 draws, and unfortunately my opponents do get there when I turn over the wheel. Someone did make a Bedogi, so I only get half the pot. We switched the game up to Super Stud 8 or better. And after I toss my 2 cards, I have Ace 2-3, which is about as good as you can get in Super Stud 8 or better because you've got the draw to the nut low. The 10 of diamonds on 4th Street starts to send my hand in the wrong direction, and the Jack of hearts on 5th Street definitely submits my hand in the wrong direction. But I guess I can say I've got a Broadway draw. The 8 of spades makes it seem like I could make a low, but honestly, I probably should have folded my hand on 6th Street, because when I make a pair of 8s on 7th Street, I check and turn over the loser, which is just simply a pair of 8s. And not only did we do worse than chop the pot, we lost all the money we put in the middle. Luckily for me, we were playing in a must move, and I got moved to the main game because I needed a change of environment in order to hopefully get some chips to flow in my direction. So we continue playing Super Stud 8 or better, and I've got a pair of queens with an ace up after I tossed the 10 and the deuce. The 8 of clubs on 4th Street really doesn't help the cause at all, but it does continue to look like I'm going for a low, and so it's all right, and I call $20 and get my 5th Street card, which is a 4 of hearts. Now, if we were playing a Badugi game, it wouldn't necessarily be that bad, but right now I'm looking like I have an 8 low when I pull in a 6th Street 10, and that's not going to help me either. So I'm really going to need the river in order to bail me out of this one. But the 8 of hearts on the river gives me queens and 8s. I'm not sure if that's going to be good enough to take down the entire pot. And in fact, it is not good enough to take down the entire pot because my opponent made a set of 3s, and I basically lost the money I put out in the middle. The change of tables is not necessarily helping at this moment in time. Let's see if we can shake the rust off a little bit, and I decide to start with 7, 8, 9 in Super Stud 8 or better. They say you shouldn't start with a 9 up in this game, but I decided to press my luck, and the 6 on 4th Street actually helps me out a lot. So I decide to bet $20 and get a couple of callers. The 4 of spades does not help me out at all, but I call the $40 on 5th Street. 6th Street also does not improve me at all with the queen of spades. And this is when you got to start to wonder if you've made the right decision or not. I check it over, and it looks like it checks around. So I'm going to do a little Brad Owen honor roll here. And if you all want me to hit that straight with either a 10 or a 5, do me a favor, smash the like button on the count of 3. And if enough of you hit that like button, I'm going to make my straight. 1, 2, 2.5, 2 3/4, 3. Look at there. You all hit that like button in abundance because I get the 10 of clubs on 7th Street. That gives me a 10 high straight. And I think that means I'm going to have to put some more chips in the middle. And fortunately for me, my opponents did not make a low, and all the chips ended up coming my way. That last hand starts me off on a heater as we move into Badeucey. I love the triple draw games, as you all know. I start off with King 6 6 4 3 and decide to toss 2 cards, keeping the 3 4 6. And on my first draw, I do in fact improve, pulling in a 5 and actually making a Bedogi on my very first draw, a 6 high Bedogi, which is not bad at all. I just need to see if I can improve on the deuce, the 7 side of things, since I'm pretty much free rolling for half of the pot, in my opinion. And so we're going to keep the bets flowing as I try to hit a better hand. I make a 10 on the second draw. Not good enough, but not going to stop me from firing off $40. And the 20-40 game is a pretty loose game. So that means I'm going to keep a few other players in the pot as well. The third draw brings me a jack, which is not going to win the deuce to 7 side of things, in my opinion. But I think I have the Badugi locked up. So I fire out $40 anyway to see what happens. And I do get a couple of other callers. And I turn over the jack high, deuce to 7 hand, and Bedogi, and it ends up scooping. Wow, I didn't see that coming, but I assume my opponents also made a worse Bedogi than me and couldn't beat the jack high. We keep things rolling with a 9-8-6-5 deuce in the next hand of Badeucey. I want to make sure I have the best chance of scooping, so I decide to toss both the 9 and the 8, keeping the 6-5-2. And on my first draw, I end up pulling in a 7 and an 8 again, which gets me a little closer, but not all the way there. So I decide to toss another card, and it ends up working in my favor because when I toss the 8 of clubs, I end up pulling in the 7 of spades. So now I have a 7 high Bedogi with a pair of 7s. I pretty much figure that I'm gonna win the Bedogi side of the pot. I just need to bring in a better deuce to 7 hand. I lead out for $40 and toss the 7 of diamonds to see what I can land. Just like the last hand though, I pull in another jack, which you have to figure is not gonna be good for the deuce to 7 side of things, but all of my opponents were drawing. So when we all check around, that means that I am once again going to be bringing in all the chips that were in the middle with a jack high and deuce to 7 and a 4-card Bedogi. We switch the game up to deuce to 7 Dramaha, and whenever you're playing deuce to 7 Dramaha or any Dramaha variant, you want to favor the 5 cards that are in your hand. So in this particular game, you want to have the best deuce to 7 hand that you're holding. I start off with queen 7 6 5 4, which means I'm going to be drawing 1 and tossing my queen. But if I hit the card I need, I'd have a pretty good deuce to 7 hand. When the flop comes 3 king ace with 2 hearts, I do have a potential for some opportunity, but not a lot, just a straight draw. So I toss the queen of spades and pull in the 10 of hearts. Now I actually have a flush draw. I've got a beautiful 10 high hand on the deuce to 7 side of things, and I made a pair of 10s on the turn. So when my opponents bet and then raise up to $80, I decide to go ahead and make the call because I'm pretty sure I have the best deuce to 7 hand. When the river comes at 8 of hearts, I've actually made a flush. My opponents check to me, I bet $40, and then I get raised, and obviously I'm going to make the call because I've got a flush with a 10 high deuce to 7 hand. Unfortunately, the flush didn't hold up as my opponent actually had a better hand than I did, and I ended up bringing home just the deuce to 7 side of things. So just like the very last hand, I'm actually dealt a 9 high in this deuce to 7 Dramaha hand, and so I actually 4-betted $80 because I'm pretty sure I'm going to be staying pat on this hand. And the board comes 2-10 ace, and I continue to bet out for $20 and get several callers because, like I said, the 20-40 game is a wild loose game of the WSOP. And I stay pat as I said I would, and I bet $40 on the turn, which comes with another ace. So now it's looking like a full house potential on the board, but I'm not scared because I know I've got at least half the pot with this 9 high. We both checked the river, and my opponent actually made the board hand, and I do bring home the 9-8-7-6-4 hand. We're going to switch the game up to Archie, and I start off with 2 paired 9s and 7s. Now remember, when you're playing Archie, you want to have either better than a pair of 9s for the high side of the pot, or better than an 8 low for the low side of the pot. So we're going to honor Brad Owen one more time, because I'm going to draw one card and see if I can hit the full house. They say on 3 draws, you should hit a full house at least 25% of the time in Archie when you start off with 2 pair. So we're going to put that to the test. On the count of 3, do me a favor and hit that like button. 1, 2, 3. Boom! I pull in the 7 for the full house. I now have 7 full of 9s, which means I'm going to be leading out for $20. And that's the way you do it when you're playing Archie. That means I'm also going to be staying pat the rest of the way and leading out for bets. What's funny is I get raised and call, which is fine because we're going to be bumping it up on the next street for sure. And on the second draw, I lead out for $40 and get called. And on the third draw, I lead out for $40 and get raised. Now, I know I'm probably not getting the low side of the pot, but I don't have really much hesitation about the high side of the pot, but I do play it safe and just decide to call. And wouldn't you know, they made a straight 7, which is good, but it's not good enough to beat this full house. We are going to stick with Archie on this next hand, and I start off with 4 to a 7 high straight, which is a beautiful starting hand in Archie. I've got 3, 4, 5, 6. All I need to do is toss the queen. So I raise it up to $40 and see what my opponents want to do. One of my opponents decides to make it $60. So I just make the call, playing it slightly conservatively, and we're off to the races. My first draw is not going to get me there, as I'm going to end up pairing my 5s, but I am undeterred and lead out for $20. The second draw, we find that both my opponents are sticking with it, but one of them goes all in for $70, and I make the call. And wouldn't you know it, as this table has been kind to me, I end up making the 7 high straight on the third draw, and I lead out for $40. I'm pretty sure I'm bringing home this entire pot, and indeed I am right. I end up scooping everything in the middle. I'm starting to build a little bit of a great wall of china and chips, which I'm not mad at all, but it does make it hard to actually film the cards. But I'm also not mad when I start off with trip 6s, because I've got a little bit of devilish intent on this hand. I want to either make quads or a full house, and I'm going to be firing the entire way. The first draw does not improve my hand, but I still lead out for $20 as I only have one other opponent. The second draw also does not improve my hand, but again, it makes no difference because I've got the triple 6s and I lead out for $40. The third and final draw actually does not improve my hand again, but is not going to stop me from taking down this pot, because I think that I still have the best possible hand as my opponent's been drawing. So I bet $40 and I get called and turn over the trip 6s, and indeed I do end up scooping the pot. We switched the game up to Bedogi, and I'm actually dealt in the small blind of Bedogi, but it's a king high Bedogi, so you don't really feel that good about that. Nonetheless, I do raise it up and decide to break my king, which is clearly the smart play. And the poker gods waste no time rewarding my smart judgment as they give me an 8 high Badugi as I pull in the ace of clubs. I lead out for $20 and get another caller. I told them I broke my king high Badugi, and I guess they didn't believe that I improved because they stayed with me. I stayed pat and bet out $40 after the second draw. And again, on the third draw, I'm going to stay pat and bet out another $40. Sometimes things just work out well for you and you get hit in the face. With the deck of cards, 8 high Bedogi is good enough to bring home all the chips in the middle. We're sticking with Bedogi, and it's not bad when you start off with 2 wheel cards of different suits. And I also have another wheel card that someone else is going to want. So I keep the 2-3 and toss the other queen and deuce and see if we can make something happen with this hand. I definitely improve after the first draw, bringing in the ace of spades, which means I reduce from the deuce of spades to the ace of spades, and the 7 of hearts gives me a different suit. And it's not that high of a suit as well, so I'm feeling pretty good about this hand. I'm going to need to toss the deuce to see if I can get all the way to the Bedogi. And on the second draw, I actually do not improve, except for the fact that I now have a 6 high 3-card draw. So I'm going to be tossing the 7 of hearts, and I did lead out for a bet of $40. And on the third and final draw, I actually make a jack Badugi, but it's not that great of a hand, and my opponent was drawing 1 as well. So I figure he's only going to call if he actually has a better Badugi than me. So I check to him. He leads out for a bet, and I call, and he only had a 3-card, which means, guess what? I'm scooping the pot again. The next game we switched to Dramaha, just plain Dramaha, no variants, which means you're going to have the best 5-card hand that you're holding and also the best Omaha hand on the board. I start off with Ace, King, King, 9-5 with Ace, King of spades. And when you know it, just as this session has been going great for me, I flop the nut flush. Can't be mad at that, and that means we're going to be firing out some very profitable bets, I do believe. And I shoot out $20 and decide to try to improve my hand that I'm holding by tossing away the 9 and the 5. I don't actually get any better per se, since I only bring in a jack and 10, which means I have a pair of kings in my hand and I have the nut flush on the board. I'm check 2, so I lead out for $40 and get called. And on the river, I'm check 2, so I bet another $40 and I don't even get called. So my pair of kings in my hand actually is the winner, as I did have a flush on the board, although the board did pair. So I scoop once again, and now my wall of chips is super impressive. So we're back to playing Super Stud 8, and I start off with a 3-up, a 9-7, 6-4 in the hole. So I decide to toss the 9 and the 7 and see if I can't make a straight to the 6. I do have an opponent to my right that has an ace up, so you always got to be concerned about that. But let's see how this hand unfolds. On 4th Street, I make an ace. So now I've got 4 to the 6 high hand, and also still an opportunity to make a wheel or a straight. I make a pair of 4s on 5th Street, which is not exactly what I want, but my board does look super impressive. I make a 10 of diamonds on 6th Street. We are going in the wrong direction. I'm going to need something to bail me out on the river. And sure enough, I do when I make a pair of 3s on the river, which means I now have 4s and 3s. And that's actually better than what my opponent has, since we were playing heads up. And that mighty 2 pair is actually going to take this pot down. My chip stack is getting so big, it's super difficult to actually record these hands, and it seems like I'm building the Burj Khalifa or the Empire State Building or something like that, but I'm not mad at it. We're going to continue with Super Stud 8 or better, and I'm actually got trip 8s, which means I am rolled up to start this hand.
Check it out, dog. Check it out, baby. I was born to roll.
And one thing you have to be careful with when you're playing a game like Super Stud is the starting hand is going to be so much better than a typical stud game because they get to throw away the cards that they don't want. So it's actually not that crazy to see people rolled up in Super Stud 8 or better. And I'm just fortunate that I'm the person that's got the 3/8 at this moment in time. Let's see if I can boat up. The 3 of hearts on 4th Street is the first card that's going to give me the opportunity to boat up. Let's see if we can pair my 3s. The deuce of hearts makes it look like I'm going for a low, which could also be positive. I could have 3 8s and still make a low and scoop the hand that way. So I'm not mad at the deuce of hearts. But what I'm really not mad at is on 6th Street when I make another deuce and waste no time making that full house. No need to sweat the river because I've got the high hand that's going to get the job done. And my opponent is actually raising into me. And so I decide to re-raise on 6th Street because I know that my full house is better what they're showing. And they end up actually having a flush and a wheel. So they do have the low side of the pot, but they do not get the high side of the pot because a boat is bigger than a flush. We're playing Archie once again, and I start off with a pair of aces, a 10-9 and a 3. And I'm keeping this hand in the vlog just to show you the types of decisions you have to make when you're playing Archie. So I start off with a pair of aces, a 10-9 and a 3, and I pull in a 4-5 and a king. So now I have to make the decision, do I actually go for the wheel draw, which is going to be a chance to scoop with both a high and a low hand, or do I just keep the aces? And in hindsight, I probably could have went for the wheel draw, but I think I was thinking about the fact that I did toss a wheel card in the beginning. Either way, not necessarily sure what was the right way to go. But then on the next draw, I bring in a jack and a queen. So now I have a Broadway draw where I could toss my ace and go for the Broadway draw trying to get a 10. But I elect to stay with my pair of aces for the third draw, and I do not actually improve as I bring in a queen and a 5. So I could have went high hand, low hand, high hand, back and forth like a seesaw on this one. But in the end, my pair of aces actually held up to hold half the pot. I split it with someone else who made a low, and we chopped a straggler's chips. We're going to switch the game up to deuce to 7 triple draw. I start off with 9, 8, 4, 3, 2. That's good enough for a raise because I'm going to keep the 8 perfect and see if I can pull in a 5, 6, or 7. And I end up getting it up to $60 actually with another opponent that raised. So we're drawing one card, and the first draw is not going to do it. So we throw that back out there. And the second draw, we bring in a 6 of clubs, which means I've got 8, 6, 4, 3 deuce, which I think is going to be good enough to win most of the time in deuce to 7 triple draw. So I lead out for a bet of $40, and we're going to stay pat on the third draw. My opponents aren't able to improve, and I end up bringing in another pot and building my ever colossal chip stack. On the last hand of this session, we're going to call it the big blind special because there's no reason I should be in a hand of deuce to 7 triple draw with king, queen, 9, 7, 4, and no deuce. But I guess I was just on such a hot streak, I decided to press my luck, throw away 3 cards, and keep the 7, 4. And it works out because I end up pulling in an 8 and a deuce. So now I've got 4, 2, a good hand in deuce to 7 with 8, 7, 4 deuce. I call $20 and toss away the jack. The 8 pairs me up on my second draw, so I'm going to check, and my opponents check as well, as I've obviously struck fear in their eyes. So they're going to give me a free opportunity to draw to a better hand. And that's exactly what happens when I bring in the 5, making the 875 for Deuce. And that means I'm going to lead out for $40, which means I'm also going to be bringing this pot home. And that means all those chips in front of me are over $1,600 in profit, and it's going to be time to cash out. So I went on a crazy run in this 2040 game today, and I won all the money back I lost in the Badugi tournament. The Bedogi tournament was a $1,500 buy-in. I ended up cashing out for $1,600 to the good in this 2040 game. That's the way you want to make your money back when you don't run well in a tournament. So when you bust out of the Bedogi tournament that cost you $1,500, you walk across to the cash table, hop in the 2040 mix, and win it right back. I've been playing since 2 p.m. It is now after midnight. I'm starving. I'm gonna go get some food from the Grand Bazaar outside the Horseshoe, go back to my room and strategize on games for tomorrow before I fly back to Atlanta. So not too bad of a day at the 2040 tables. Hey, look, this heat is getting to me just like that heat coming off that poker table. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump in this pool at Resorts World, cool off a little bit, and I'll catch you in the next video.